I want to introduce you to our guest preacher this morning. I've known Janie Spahr for 30 years at least, and I first encountered her at Metropolitan Community Church in San Francisco, where I was the pastor for many years. But Janie preceded me there because as a Presbyterian minister, she came out and the Presbyterian Church no longer felt the need for her services. And I have to say, MCC over the years had the cream of the crop of all the clergy from all the denominations that they could not see the gift of gay and lesbian clergy, but we got to benefit from it. And, in some ways, we're thankful to them for giving us the best ministers in the world. Janie embodies that. You could go into MCC Church in San Francisco today, 30 years after she worked there officially, and people will still pause appreciatively and smile because they remember how much she loved them while she was there, and she had an ongoing relationship with us over the years. Janie has been on trial more times than any other minister, I think, in the Protestant church. And this is true. First, in the 80s and 90s for being a lesbian, the Downtown United Presbyterian Church in Rochester, New York, called her through a process, a perfectly valid, licit process, and after they called her, the presbytery in that area refused to allow her to take that job because she's a lesbian. And all through the 80s and 90s, they kept putting her on trial for being a lesbian. Then she kept doing these gay weddings. In the 80s, 90s, in the first part of this century, she's unrepentant and self-avowed, and we love that about her. She did not lose heart, even when she was put on trial at one point for performing 16 marriages for same-sex couples. And she never lost her sense of humor, as you'll see, and her spirit. And I wanted you to experience her because a lot of what we have today, for example, the Presbyterian Church has reversed itself on gay and lesbian ordination and on gay and lesbian marriage. Who knew? They're because of people like Janie, but Janie in particular. She's a part of a movement, but she really is a leader in it. So she's a brilliant strategist, but also she's the heart of liberation, and I know you'll experience that too. So would you welcome Janie?
Thank you so much. Wow. Is this heaven? I think it is. Can you believe this? My, oh my. Oh my. Embodied, beautiful. Thank you so much. How great it is to be with you. You just can't imagine. It's like when I'm hearing your music and everything, I could say horse pucky and you'd think I was good. All right, will you pray with me, please? Wonderful God, we love your word, and we love your welcome, and we love the radical way you keep coaxing us into who we are. We thank you for your mission of justice. We thank you for your word that gives us hope. We thank you for this church that has stood for so much and continues to carry on your message. So bless us, God, with the wonder of who you are and the wonder of who you are within us, that we might continue your amazing work of love and justice. We're grateful. Amen. Well, I love these texts. I was going to preach something else. And for those of us that are Presbyterians, we sometimes have scripts. But the older you get, you I really did do it. Here, Jim, my page is right here. But you know what happens to you, don't you? You get goosed by the Holy Spirit. And she says, you've got to be speaking about something else. So God help you, whoever you are, who woke me up at 5 a.m. this morning, I want to say thank you so much. I wanted to speak with you about certain things today because I had written it and then there were things on my heart, and I know it's on your heart as well. I want to tell you I'm a twin, and Joni and I had such a fabulous childhood. We were in a church, Watson Presbyterian Church, at the end of our street, and I watched my parents have these amazing friendships. And my grandma, you know those church bazaars? Did any of you ever? I can smell the cooking in the church bazaars. And my grandma would crochet these little dolls and put designs on aprons. Do you know what I'm talking about at all? And it's this wonderful thing, and they tell you that you're loved. And you know, when we got confirmed, it was really amazing. Judy Parkhill and Gail McCormick, this is what you did to me, remembering this. And then my twin sister Joni and me sitting right here. And we were confirmed, and we also, for the first time, wore silk stockings, a garter belt, and small heels. But, I mean, you have to remember the whole thing. Do you know what I mean? But I loved this church, and I loved its message, and I loved the stories of Jesus and so on. So when it was coming time, even though I had never met a woman minister, I just knew from an early age that I was going to be a minister. You know, and the people that you dated, the men, do you remember? Before you knew who you were, would say things like, you know, you're a lot of fun, Jane. I don't think you ought to go into the ministry. But you know, there's something inside your heart that when you're called, you can't say no. So God's yes in the face of no. Because a lot of it then was gender discrimination and, of course, race and so on. But what happened is, in doing this ministry, I was with lots of youth. And I had this huge practice there in San Rafael, California. But before that, I was in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I was in the heart of the African American community there. It was the first time they had ever put two women together, and they called us the checkerboard staff. And so Wanda Graham Harris, I just want to mention her name because it's so incredible, and this is what I'm going to tell you what happened in Pittsburgh. First of all, no man wanted the job. So I got it. And with that, the first time I preached, like I said, sometimes we like scripts. Do you know, have any of you ever been scripted in your life? So I read my sermon, and after I was done, I came running up to her and said, well, Wanda, what did you think? And she smiled. And she said to me, child, I'm going to teach you how to preach from your neck down, honey. So I tell her it's her fault that I'm like this. It was an amazing time because what did I see? What did I see? Because after I came out and after I had been with kids who had told me all their secrets, youth groups, you know, when you tell kids, you can tell us anything, and they do. But after my experience in Pittsburgh and then in this church, I knew what was going on inside of me. And that is, I knew Janie Spahr, my former husband, would leave a book around the house called Loving Someone Gay by Don Clark. And he'd say to me, you ought to read this. But you know, we busy ourselves a lot, don't we? We become addicted to business or something, or busyness, or whatever the addiction may be, because we don't want to hear what God is pulling out of us, is coaxing us to listen. And so I met my first lesbian and gay. It was just lesbian and gay then. Remember, bisexual and trans people weren't saying that. Do you remember that? And I heard Bill Johnson and Ellen Barrett. The Presbyterians were studying. You know, we're so good at studying and so good at committees. So there was this study that went on, and they said, Janie, what we'd like you to do, we'd like you to come and talk about gender oppression and see if there's something about that and oppression against lesbian and gay people. I said, okay. So I went, and I heard these wonderful people, and I came running into the house, and I said, oh my God, Jimmy, I know who I am. I'm a lesbian. He said, oh, thank God. I've been waiting for you to tell me. So that night, we sat with the kids at dinner, and this is the thing, and this is why I'm so grateful and why I named Jim Spahr. He said, Mommy, tell the boys the wonderful thing that has happened to you. And I was like, and Jimmy, I began to cry, and Jimmy said to me, well, Mommy, you love people. And the other one said, Mommy, this is so exciting. Let's go tell the church. And Jim said to them, you know what, Chetty, I don't think the church is going to be as excited as we are. And it has borne true till lately. But I wanted to just give you a little window into that. Because isn't it something when you finally get yourself and you're not hiding anymore, and then the church says, thanks for stopping by. Isn't it so incredible? We're finally healthy. We're not hiding. It's like, hi, it's me. I'm Janie. They're like, who? So as Jim said, this amazing MCC, and it's Jimmy Spahr. See, I find this out years later. Jimmy Spahr, my former husband, called them and said, you ought to hear Janie, you know? And it's that kind of ally and that kind of friend. And that church just opened its doors. So you know you never forget the people who love you and who see you for who you are. But so, yes. So the downtown church, so we were told no by the denomination. It was really something that, you know, with my sons, because my one was there, when the church was saying, when this one attorney was something, well, you know, Janie Spahr is really a pederast, you know, all these terrible things. And I watched my son, a very bright boy from Berkeley, right? And he looked like this. I watched it because they did this documentary, and I watched him like this, and he goes, Mom, I thought you told me the Presbyterians were educated. He said, this is evil what's happening here today. They will never talk that way about my mother. So, that son has never gone back to the Presbyterian church. He said, I will not sit in a place to hear anyone say that about my mother. He said, you are far more forgiving than me. So we work on that in our house. We work on it because their daddy, also with his wonderful wife, who I did their wedding, wonderful, wonderful Jackie, who's my dear friend, they left the church for 20 years because of what people said about their family. And Jimmy came back, they came back to the church after we had done a conference, because they heard what we all know when we get healthy. We ask questions like this. Who's not at the table and why? It's all about power and power differential. It's about whoever we name strange at the time. The widow, right? And the stranger. The widow, orphan, and the stranger in our Hebrew Bible. But it's who we name second class, less than. People in power name people of less power. And they define us as self-avowed, unrepentant. And they define people of color, women, let's talk about it, race, class, mental illness, whatever it is, you see. So whatever who's in power frames us as second class and less than. And that's our job, always, always in the church, to ask, who asks the questions, who frames the questions, and who gives the answers? We got to always be asking that. Who's in power? Who benefits from this? Why or why not? And in what ways am I complicit with this? Because right now in the Presbyterian Church, they have just said yes to a portion, at least a portion of marriage equality. But there is a Belhar confession that just came out of South Africa. And let me tell you this, if we aren't as serious about a confession which talks about anti-apartheid and talks about racism. If we are only talking about LGBT things and we are not talking and trying to do change around racism, I'm telling you, that is what power does. It isolates us from one another. So by God, I better be working for the Belhar Confession. Do you hear what I'm saying? That's what we're about. It is. You know, this is what you go around the country and they say things like this. Oh, Reverend Spahr, we just like you so much. And they say it without an accent, too. One woman said to me, Reverend Spahr, we have never talked about heterosexuality, let alone homosexuality, but I think we are today. I said, I think we are. Listen to what I'm going to say to you. You can tell me you love me. You can tell me I'm the nicest person you ever met, but if you're not voting for me, you don't love me. Do you hear me? Love without justice is no love at all. Love without justice. So I want to tell you a story. We usually give 3 stories. I think I'll give you one. I want to tell you one, and then maybe another. But I want to tell you the first time I went out, and I told this earlier, but this is another story. MCC, so many of the churches were put on fire, all kinds of things. And those of us that were out there, you know, you just can't believe it because I was so excited to be an evangelist, you know, to reclaim that word. I was a lesbian evangelist. You know what fun it is to be on a plane and tell people? When they, you know, and they lay out their life to you. Do you know what I mean? You know what I mean? So they lay out their life, and then they turn to me and say, well, what do you do? I said, well, I'm a lesbian evangelist. That is a fun thing. But I want to tell you, so one of the places I went, I thought, surely this is going to be great because it was Bethlehem. It was Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. I thought, sure, with a name like that, somebody's going to accept me. But the thing is, the Presbyterians didn't have me because they were afraid. So the Moravians had me. And I was walking into the Moravian church with my little briefcase and so on. And this is another time when they said to me, are you Reverend Spahr? I said, yes, I am. They said, well, there's been a bomb threat in the seminary, and we want you to come out if we're emptying the seminary right now, so that by you being here, it's frightened people. And what these people did was so wonderful, the Moravians, is they got plainclothes people, and they followed me at every college and every place I went so I wouldn't be hurt. But I want to tell you why I wasn't ever hurt, at least not physically or violently. When I started this work, you remember those old message tapes that you used to hit? Do you remember those at all? Well, in those early years, this is what I heard. A message, I hit the message tape, and this is what I heard. Janie Spahr, there are so many of your friends who have died that are in heaven. And I just want you to know, this is all our friends with HIV, who you know that we have loved and buried. I just want you to know that you will never be hurt because they're there watching you. So don't you worry. And that was my message. So I believed that. So I, honest to God, was never, ever afraid. No matter when one woman yelled at me, I hate you, Janie Spahr. I hate you for making me think about things I don't want to think about. I said, well, thank you so much. That was in Texas. Yeah. But I want to tell you this one story, and she's coming to me. I told a different story earlier, but I'm going to tell you a story about a dear friend of mine in Atlanta, Marty Reitmeyer. She said to me, you know, Janie, she's a fabulous Christian educator. And she said to me, you know, I had to leave the country. I had to go and do peace work and a witness. I had to do this because I just couldn't find myself. So she said, I went over to Korea, and she said at night, I used to walk this big field, And she said every night she'd walk around it and say this: God, either change me or give me peace. Either change me or give me peace. I'm dying in here. And she said this one night she heard this: Marty Reitmeyer, I love you just the way you are. She said, I went home. I wrote a letter. She has 10 brothers and sisters. She wrote to all of them. 9 of the 10 said, yippee-coyote, good for you. She went to her church, and the minister said, there's a rumor that you may be lesbian. I don't know if you are or not, but he said it's enough, it's a rumor. So he said, I want you to pack your things, and I want you to leave today. So she packed up her things, but she said, you know, Janie, I found myself, and I found God. And with that, I want you to know what she's doing now. She is now the full-time Christian educator in the church that threw her out. She is so damn good that when the minister left, and she was Christian educator for the whole synod, when she left that job, they called her up and they said, Marty, we'll never forget you, come back. And she did. What do you think about that? This is the kind, yes. So when all this marriage business came up, you know, and these trials, and what I told them the last time, you know, people feel sorry for you when you're on trial. But let me tell you something. When you're on a disciplinary trial, in the courts, you can say anything you ever wanted to say to the church. It is fabulous. I'm not kidding. You could say, boy, I heard more about some of the good, fabulous things about being Presbyterian. We had these great theologians come in. We had these couples that testified, these amazing couples that would tell about their fun marriages and who they were and would lay out their whole lives, you know. And it was just this, you know, and what happened is, you know, when these things happen, then you all have to get together. Do you understand? So every night was a party given by the church. So it was, you know, when people would say, oh, Janie, we're so you're on trial. I want to tell you something. When I've been on trial, I have never been closer to God in all my life. Because I know it was so right what we were doing. And I knew this is what God wanted for us. I knew it in my bones and everywhere that it was right. So that's why you could say good things and they think you were smart. You fooled them. But it was that kind of thing. And I watched my friends, you know, give over their amazing witness so that you can imagine when we were told no. I mean, you can only imagine. And I turned one couple, wonderful couple, both are UCC, by the way, and had a beautiful little girl, Kern and Katie, and so on. And I just turned and I looked at them, and they were looking at me like, what are we doing here again? What have we done? You know, and here's our little girl. What are they saying again? Or to Jeff and David, who turned around and they were just weeping. They had come out of a very conservative church and so on, and finally to hear them really feel acceptance and love and so like that. And I look and their shirts were just filled with tears. Now let me tell you something. The person who gave that complaint didn't come to the trial. Did you hear me? So I think people ought to be accountable. If you're going to lob a bomb or a horrendous thing, you got to know what you've done. So I am known to be very loving and caring. Do you hear me? Is that true? It's true. I did this in the most loving way I could. But I called this man on the phone First of all, I said, why didn't you call me? Why didn't you ask me about Sarah and Sherry, who've been together 20 years? Imagine if they wouldn't have asked me to marry them. I watched their child raise up. But I said, you didn't even come. You didn't even come and hear them. Who are you? I said, I thought this was about Christians. I thought it was supposed to be about that we heard one another. That why didn't you call me? And why didn't you come? You might have really heard a witness. And then I said this, so where are you, sir, on the cleanup? Where are you on the cleanup of these people and their lives who have been so hurt? Where are you? Because I'm here. Where are you? I'm telling you, we got to say to people, this is violence and you've got to stop it. And he was like, quiet. And he said, well, Janie, you know, I just wanted the presbytery like to do some education or something like that. I said, sir, you did a disciplinary case. A disciplinary case is against people. And if you wanted the presbytery to be educating or whatever you wanted, which they've been doing for years, then by God, you chose me. I'm telling you, friends, accountability of saying to people, this is not Christian what you're doing. Because watch, we come from the one who wants us to really look and listen, to listen to another, to listen deep inside, to listen to indigenous people around the world who have lost their water rights, their land rights, and have become invisible. We want to hear those voices. They're working right now in the UN on indigenous people's rights. Where are we? You are doing work on immigration. Hot dog, by God, you've got to keep doing it. On every single thing that says we're less than, that we're not worthy. We've just got to be there. Because why? Because we are gay people and we are damn healthy and we are ready to serve. Yes. So the last thing, how are we doing on time, Reverend? Are we all right? This is the So the last thing, just when you think, you know, after the third time you've been told no by a court and you keep thinking, God, I thought they were going to get it this time. Do you know, honestly, I'm that positive, obnoxiously positive. But, you know, so it was like I thought, well, I guess I'm going to go home for a while and be with my grandchildren who I love, my children who I adore, and so on. And this is what one of my wonderful attorneys, you know, and they do it for free, and they're wonderful friends, Sarah and Scott and Beverly. I can never thank them enough. And so at the Presbytery meeting, Scott said, I'd like to move that we don't rebuke Janie. That was the thing from the General Assembly. And even the clerk had said, well, listen, we're just going to read a few lines, Janie, you don't have to worry, and something like that. And said, no, I think we're going to move this. So they moved it. We had 5 minutes on the docket. And this is what I want to tell you. And this is why I love God so much and people who stand. For an hour and a half, people came forward and they said things like this. You know, Janie, we've always stood beside you and behind you, but we've never stood in front of you. And it's time we stand in front of you. Another woman who's doing recovery work, this is what we do in recovery, Janie. We name the truth. So this thing is, she said, this is what I'm saying to this presbytery. What we're doing to Janie and these couples is crazy. It's crazy. Let's name it. And Herman Wagen, one of the great New Testament theologians of our time, came forward and he raised his Bible. And he said, Presbyterians today, we are going to do it differently. We are going to vote for Janie and these couples, and we're going to stand in front of her. The place went, wow, it was like, and it was an overwhelming vote. Now, can I tell you, for my dear family who sat there, and for the couples who dared to come because they didn't want to hear rebuke, can you imagine? And I sat there like, I can't believe it. Maybe it is that you just have to live a long time. I watched lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender Presbyterians sitting there. I watched them. It was like, this is what I always said to the church. This trial is not about me. This trial is about a church that has said no to its children and its grandchildren. This is about the church. So, my friends, because of people like you, because of the Cathedral of Hope, because of this witness that keeps happening like the widow, we just keep coming back. And there is something about that, and to be loving about it makes them crazy. One man said to me at the first trial, I'm almost done, said the first trial, he said to me, Reverend Spahr, if you win, I'm going to take 7 churches with me. I said, well, thank you for that welcome. But it was an amazing thing that happened to him because we went, you see. People said to me, well, don't meet with him, Jenny. I said, no, I want to meet with him. And so this is what I said. We met for a long time, and this is what I said. I think it's a gift, and you think it's a sin. So I said, so that's where we are. So who do you love? Tell me about your family. Tell me about who you are. And then I told him about who I am. And we had this time, and then we prayed together, and this is what he said to me. Janie Spahr, he said, I don't know about homosexuality, but by God, I think you're a Christian, and that's saying a lot. I said, thank you, sir. When we went in a van, a group of us, and when you go in a van, and it's so fabulous because, in the South, I always take Southerners with me. Or I'm in Texas, you take you know what I'm saying? Because I'm not stupid. You know what I mean? Jesus taught us this, and to organize with people that they might know. So, but this is what happened with this man. Years later, people were told that if they came to hear us, that it would not be good for them. Clergy were not invited. And you know who came? He was the only one who came out of that whole presbytery, and this is what he said. I'm so sorry. I am so ashamed. He said, I will go back and tell them. I said, thanks. And one more in Texas. We went to this one place, and it was a beautiful sanctuary, something like this. And this is what this man said. He said, well, Reverend Spahr, he said, I wish I had courage like you. And I said to him, sir, while you're waiting to have your courage, my people are dying. So it's time to get your courage. And he did. And he did. Accountability. Why? Because Jesus told us to. So I have something for you because I've come here to say thank you. I've come here to say thank you for all your years and all your struggle. So when you go into the Castro and you say you're going to Texas, they say, I guess you want something big. I said, yes, I do. How's this? Let me tell you. In case you should wonder who God is, She is a disco dancer, and she wants to dance with you. Sir. Oh, thank you. And a wonderful lesbian woman put that screw on so you can hang it somewhere. Now, the other thing, I love this man because I know what he's doing. And I know his commitment to justice in so many areas. And the invitations and what you are doing here. Because, like I say, it's all about that. So I also went into this place and I said, well, there's this friend of mine, he's a gay man, and he's in the Castro. You don't have to say that. You know what I'm saying? But I said, well, you know, he's in Texas. And what could I give him that would be just a wonderful thing to remind him of home? Or here. So I want you to see this. So, this is from the Castro to Jim Matulski. It's a mermaid, you see, but the name of this man, honest to God, on the box, his name is Dallas. This is no kidding. And why I loved it, he not only has a 10-gallon hat, honey, but he's got a cross around his neck. Do you like this?
Thank you.
I love you, honey. Thank you so much. Thank you. Bless your heart. Woo!